Hi, I'm Sarah.
And I'm Helen.
And this is the Squiggly Careers podcast. Every week we take a different topic to do with work and share some ideas and actions that we hope will help all of us navigate those squiggly careers with that bit more confidence and control.
And for a bit more extra Squiggly Career support, don't forget to sign up for our weekly email, Squiggly Careers in Action, where you'll get all the links to the podcast and all the tools that go along with it. You'll also see some behind the scenes stuff that happens in our work and get some extra tips and tools like Sarah's Borrowed Brilliance and my how-to videos.
So today we're talking about 4 AI prompts to accelerate your squiggly career.
It's the AI episode that we get asked for all the time.
Well, also we haven't told each other our answers.
Which could look like bad preparation, but it isn't. It's intentional.
No, it was very intentional. Which you
intentional.
have prepared. There are other episodes that we've been way less prepared for than today.
So you decided the 4 areas of focus for this because you could ask AI anything, but you decided 4 different areas that we were going to use AI to help us in squiggly careers. Which areas did you choose?
So I tried to choose areas that weren't too specific to only one situation.
Yeah.
So obviously AI can be brilliant for a career conversation or an interview, but then I thought, well, if that's not you right now, probably not as useful for everybody. We'll perhaps come back to some of those things. So I went for relationships.
Yeah.
Being stuck.
Yeah.
Or sort of having a feeling about your career that you want to explore. So it doesn't have to be stuck. You could be feeling motivated, energized, lost. So a kind of a feeling, emotion-based question. Yeah, that's a good way of describing it. Coping with change.
Standard.
Because it's so standard now, but also I think it also means that, something people can find hard.
Yeah. And
probably we can all get a bit better at. And then this one is specific, but I think it will be relevant for everyone. LinkedIn.
Just LinkedIn. Anything in particular about LinkedIn?
LinkedIn, and perhaps what your LinkedIn profile might be telling other people about you. And I also think LinkedIn is an interesting one because when I talk about confidence gremlins to people, and one of the confidence gremlins is comparison, LinkedIn often comes up as like LinkedIn can work against you. It can make you feel bad about yourself, and you see all these people winning awards or sharing their promotions, and you're like, oh, that's not me.
Having lots of followers, like if you've not got many, and you're like, oh wow,
it's almost become a bit of a divisive place, I think. And I actually, it prompts a real reaction from people in like the workshops that we do. Whereas when I sort of say to people, oh, I use LinkedIn for learning, for curiosity, and often for reconnection. If I've not seen someone for a while, probably for me as an introvert, it's a good way to try and find that person to get back in touch. In a much more informal way, everyone's like, oh yeah, that's fine. Like that feels better for people. So I'm like, just have a good enough profile and then sort of use it in your own way for your own like learning. So I just think it's a topic that keeps coming up. So I was like, let's
how can AI help us? Well, we should say, because that was actually the one that I did. So the way this episode will is we've got these 4 different areas, and Sarah and I have got curious about some prompts that you can use for AI. And as we were working out what was going to be most useful for you and your development, I think one of the things that we realized is you've got to have a really nice clear prompt. Actually, sometimes I asked AI to write me a better prompt than the one that I'd written.
That's one of the things that Reid Hoffman, who's written Super Agency, tells you to do.
So I was doing
get the AI to do the work for you.
I sort of wrote it out, and then I thought, well, I need to give people this prompt, and mine's a bit waffly. So I just asked AI what would be a better way of using prompt to this. So you've got to have a good, clear prompt, and you've got to personalise the prompt. So it's not just how can I cope with change, because you'll get an okay answer with that. You'll get some sort of generic stuff about how to cope with change, but it's much more useful if you put a bit more personal context in, maybe about sort of where you work or how long you've worked there or what industry in or the types of change. So for each of the 4 scenarios we're going to talk through, we'll obviously share the prompt, but there is this sort of element of personalization in there that will apply specifically to you, what you do.
We sort of took 2 each. We haven't shared the answers that we got back with each other, but what we thought would be helpful is to go through what we did, but then together to talk about, well, how useful did we find it?
Yeah.
So we might be like, well, that one actually didn't work that well, or we changed it. I also, for each one, I think we both had a go at sort of a follow-up prompt, because it's very rare, I think, you do one prompt and go, oh,
amazing,
solved, sorted. So there's usually sort of, and then where do you go next with it? And actually sometimes the value kind of came from that second question. So here's the first one. So we started with relationships and thought we'd have some fun with this one. So let's see if you recognise this person. I wrote, here's a profile of someone I work with. Extrovert, fast-paced, can get easily distracted, easily bored, energetic, knows lots of people.
I don't know who you're talking about.
No.
Absolutely no idea.
So I just wrote that. And then I went, here's my profile.
Yeah.
All in the same prompt. Introverted, reflective, single-minded, I was being honest. Optimistic, knows a few people. Then my sort of question was, how do I build a positive relationship with this person?
Okay.
It sounds like you and your colleague have quite different working styles.
Oh.
Exclamation mark. That's the first thing it said. But apparently this is often where the most interesting and productive collaborations can blossom.
Oh.
Apparently we're going to blossom at some point.
Great.
I look forward to that moment.
Squiggly blossom.
And so then what's interesting, and actually I did find this with every prompt that I tried, and I tried some that we didn't include in the podcast, the answers are long. I got long answers.
Okay.
So I sometimes found that a bit overwhelming. And I think don't forget you can then ask for a summary. So I did that quite consistently. Or I literally sometimes went, that's a lot of information. Can you summarise this into 3 bullet points? Or can you summarise this into 1 paragraph? But the longer answer here did give me lots of things where I was like, actually, they're all really useful. So it talks about appreciating differences, finding common ground. The bit that I found most helpful, there was a section about how I might adapt myself. And it talked about you being fast-paced, so be prepared to communicate concisely and get to the point quickly. And I was like, Helen loves that. That's your
true. Voice notes. And I put you on 2 speed.
Yeah, I'm surprised you don't go faster, to be honest.
How can I can't. I have to.
It doesn't.
I've trained my brain. Someone overheard me listening to it, and they were like, "What? I can't understand."
Like a little monkey or
I was like, "I've trained myself to listen to you at times 2 speed."
Like a little alien voice. So there was like something about that, and then even though I know that, and also I know you really well, so obviously I did pick someone I know really well, it did make me stop and think, oh, I probably don't always do that. And that probably is a bit annoying. So perhaps I could do something different there. It made me think about being kind to you, because it said that you've got lots of potential for distraction. And so apparently I should be gently steering you back to discussion and staying focused, rather than just saying, put your phone down.
You never say phone. You just look.
No, I don't. I just look at you. I don't ever say anything now.
You know, but you just like...
Yeah, but I try.
I turned it over earlier. Did you see?
I'm also proud of you. Then it talked about you being extrovert. I was like, fine. Then I quite liked, I was like, how I can make the most of you. It started to go. I was like, brilliant. It's like, start leveraging your network for me. I was like,
nice idea.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And actually, I do ask you to do that sometimes. I will say, oh, I'd like to know that person. Can you introduce me? Or
I did that recently and they haven't come back to me.
Yeah. Be open to their energy. Apparently, your high energy might feel different, but I should be enthusiastic about you.
Good to know.
And we should have check-ins. So actually, when I read the first bit, I was like, well, I already feel like I know quite a lot of this. It perhaps prompted a bit of accountability in me to think about, am I always adapting helpfully for you without, still kind of getting what I need. What I found more useful was my follow-up prompt.
Okay.
What could get in the way of us building a good relationship?
Okay.
And there it talked about...
Talking about Helen on a podcast?
Well, I mean, it did say here...
Sorry, it's not about me.
It's not about you. It did say we have different needs for interaction.
True.
So it said, do you think you'd have a need for social interaction, which might clash from my preference for more solitary work? And I was thinking, the few times where we've got close to falling out...
Yeah, have been in a social situation. Yeah, we're both conscious of avoiding those now.
And we... now are very intentional about that. In a way, actually, we never were before, which I actually find really interesting.
My favourite Sarah thing recently was when I invited Sarah to a party and I sent her the invite and she wrote over the top of it, hard no, and sent it back. I've literally saved that as an example.
Oh, I did actually do that.
Yeah.
But also, I think your message, I'm going to be fair to me, to the listeners, was, I assume you don't want to come to
this.
Yes. So,
I did sort of provide you an option.
But it said about miscommunication because of our different styles and pacing, that could be kind of frustrating. So my conclusion with this was actually probably less useful for you than it was when I then started to put in some profiles of our team.
Yes.
So we do know each other very well. And
we've probably got already past adapted the point, quite a bit.
I feel like we know each other's AI. I'm always like, we know what the avatar would be. Yeah. Whereas I don't spend anywhere near as much time with other people in our team as I do with you. So then I started to put in some of their profiles based on some profiling that we've done on people's strengths together already. So I'd got some data that I could put in, and I started to put those in and then put my own data as well. And then that did make me think, oh, I don't do that for that person, or I never think about that. And that probably is annoying for them that I keep correcting this thing, or I don't respond very quickly. We actually had some feedback on this recently where someone who's quite new working with us messaged me, and they said, oh, Helen's not responded to me yet. I'm really worried that she like doesn't think it's very good and she's not telling me something. And I was like, oh no, she just won't have looked at it yet. Like, I knew how busy you were in that 2 or 3 days, but for her, I suppose she didn't know. And she didn't kind of have that kind of context. And actually, I think about her and her working style and you and your working style actually quite different. You're like, oh, that's a clash that potentially...
It was useful for me to be aware of, isn't it?
Yeah,
Just
useful.
More conscious.
And so I was like, actually, for maybe as a team as a whole, you could put in all of your team. We were actually saying we know one CEO who shared an example with us recently where he put the profile of his board into an AI and basically sort of built his board into an AI, and he asks the AI, what are my board going to make of this decision before actually going to the real board? And I was like, that's really smart. So my conclusion with this first one was there's a difference between one-to-one and a team. And where I think it'd probably be most helpful one-to-one is where maybe something's not working. So it's like friction. If I think about some people I've worked for or with in the past where I was like, this is tough. You know, like understanding other people. This is very safe. I actually read an article about that this week, how AI in some ways feels very safe as a way to like test out, like my manager's profile is this, I am like this. What is it that's making it really hard for us to work together collaboratively? So I'm like understanding friction, I think very useful. And then more generally, understanding your just team better, particularly probably around communication styles, ways of working. And then you could use this, I was thinking, like in a team meeting. So you could do this first, and then, you know, like you always want to add on the human aspect to what the AI is telling you. If we had like Lucy and Danielle and all of our team there, we could then say, well, this is what the AI said. What do you think they've got wrong? What would you build on it? But it gives everyone a starting point.
So just what was the prompt again? I know there's personalization was like my skills and your skills, but what was the prompt?
You put in the profile of both people.
Yep.
How do I build a positive relationship with this person?
So it's sort of my profile is, their profile is, how do I build a positive relationship with this person?
And I just put in as many words as I could think of for our profile.
Yeah. Love it. Love it. Okay. Second area then. Shall we go on to coping with change?
Yes.
Okay. So the prompt that I use for this, I work as a, insert your job, at, insert your company. So I work as I put here, customer account manager at Britvic.
Ooh, we're going back in time.
We're going
really
back in time. I know, we went back in time to when I was doing a sales job. Second bit is the change I'm experiencing is, and for the purpose of this example, I put declining sales and not hitting my targets. Ooh. Third part of this prompt is I'm finding it hard because... And my personalization there was I'm motivated by achievement and I'm worried it's going to affect people's perception of my performance.
Yeah.
So I'm not hitting those targets. And then the fourth bit of the prompt is I would like some ideas too. And my personalization there was respond to the change and still feel like I'm progressing in my career and succeeding in my work. So there's sort of 4 parts of the prompt, and for each bit you're going to add a bit of personalization on. I use ChatGPT for this, which is probably like my go-to tool. I think you used Gemini, didn't you, for yours?
Yes, just to try it out. Because when you're like, oh, I'm defaulting to ChatGPT every time. And then I went into a company where they all use Gemini, and it just made me think, I'll just try it.
I sometimes flip between ChatGPT and Perplexity.ai. I quite like that one as well. So I found the first bit relatively useful. So my first response to that question, I think it was 5 actions. It wasn't too long. You know, you mentioned yours was like overwhelmingly long.
Yeah.
Mine wasn't that long. So I got things like redefine what achievement looks like for you now. And it had some, ideas to do that, like cross-functional collaboration, for example. Own the narrative of your performance. Run a what's in my control sprint. Ooh. I thought that was interesting. It's obviously already learned from me because we would talk about sprints. So it's learned.
At what point does it become scary?
Yeah, it's already learned from me a what's in my control sprint. Turn it into a career story. And then I really like the last idea, which was talk to your manager about redefining success, which I thought I would have done that if success to that point had been achieving my sales targets, and maybe because of the market that wasn't possible right now, I probably would talk to my manager and say, I know my targets are important, but it's hard for me to hit them. What else is important? So I did. What made me reflect on is it will come up with quite a lot of ideas, but there's still some autonomy, right?
You're still choosing,
you still choose,
aren't you?
You're still choosing.
You're saying, well, not that one, but a bit of that one,
Yes.
or I'll take that one and I'll edit it in my own way.
Yeah. Do you know what I should have done, which I didn't do, is I maybe should have changed the personalisation and seen how the answers that it gave me differed. So I could have said, I work as a marketing director at Microsoft. I'm going through a restructure. I'm finding it hard because of the ambiguity. And just I didn't play around with kind of different change situations, but I didn't, it was quite practical, and there were some bits I picked out that were really useful. My follow-up prompt, it's a very Helen thing. My follow-up prompt was, create a 30-day checklist of small daily actions to boost my confidence and control, and make it into a PDF I can tick off.
Right.
That was nice. I was like a sort of self-boosting bingo. I was thinking,
does it work? It can create that.
Yeah, it'll create a nice little PDF, and it had a list, and then you can download it and you can just tick it. And there were like lots of small actions that I could do. Some of them I was a bit like, was a bit trite, but actually it gave me a tickable list of things that I could do, which I thought, even if I didn't do all 30, I thought it would give me, some things that I could get a sense of momentum and control. And it was like a bit micro, when you're going through change and it feels like,
there was massive and overwhelming.
Massive. But this is just like a little micro. I've done this. I quite like that.
So could you put the transcript of this script into an AI and then ask it to create a checklist of 5 actions to take in the next 5 days from what you've listened to? Presumably you could.
Yeah. Should you wish to do that, you can get the transcript for this episode on amazingingif.com.
Yeah, well, that's what
you'll be able to
thinking.
cut and paste it. And I did that recently, separate point. I did that recently with a podcast that I was listening to. And I was listening to it when I was driving. And I remember thinking, wow, it's really good. And I couldn't write anything down. And so afterwards, I copied and pasted the transcript. It was an Adam Grant episode, actually. Copied and pasted the transcript into ChatGPT. And then I just asked it questions. Like, I remember this point. Can you pick this
more
out?
Conversation versus a checklist.
It sort of felt like I was just sort of chatting with the podcast episode a little bit. But yeah, if you want to do that, then all of our transcripts are on our website. So.
I wonder if you tried that, whether it feels like you're chatting to us.
Oh, yeah.
We'll have to try that. Yeah. Also, is that really meta if you're trying to chat to yourself?
Is that narcissistic?
Yes. But if somebody else is doing it, I was imagining
Hi, Helen.
So. Hi.
What's one of your great ideas that you had on the podcast?
What was my most quotable sentence?
Oh, my gosh.
What were Sarah's words of wisdom from this episode?
Sarah offered nothing to this episode.
Yeah. Sorry, no answer to that one. Imagine
Next question,
that.
Please.
Yeah, really dent your ego. Should we move on to the next one?
Let's do it.
So this is the sort of emotions and how you're feeling. So I'd written, I'm an innovation manager in a financial services company. And I wrote, and I'm feeling a bit bored. So I actually went with bored rather than stuck. Real life example here.
I wasn't going to say that, but I do.
Yeah.
I know the moment.
And then I wrote, actually, I did a slightly different prompt. What questions could I ask myself to feel more positive about the work that I do? So I was trying to get it to ask me, or to come up with some coach yourself questions. So rather than just always ideas, like tell me what to do. Because I felt like I was getting quite a lot of bullet pointed lists of like, do this, do this, do this. And I was like, well, no, I'm more reflective. So I would like some questions. I also like how empathetic these AIs at least try to be. It's completely understandable to feel a bit bored sometimes, even in a role like innovation manager. That sounds inherently exciting! ! I might have to train my own AIs to get rid of the exclamation marks.
Reply with no exclamation marks.
I don't want any exclamation marks. I literally said to someone in our team this week, I really don't like exclamation marks. And they were like, oh, Helen uses them a bit. I'm like,
you're like, well aware.
I know, that's in the AI of like why we sometimes don't get on. No, I'm joking. Kind of. So it then started to talk to me about these questions. And actually, what I liked is it divided it into sections, which I hadn't asked it to do. So it focused on impact and purpose, growth and learning, contribution and strengths, focusing on the future. I was like, it gave me some frames and some themes, which again, I felt like meant that I could then edit or choose like which direction I wanted to go in. I'm
intrigued to hear these questions because I think one of your very strong skills is you're so good at reflective questions. In our book You Coach You, which is there behind Sarah, the Sarah's ability to come up with like a coach yourself question, it's like you're so good at it. So I'm wondering whether it can top your skill.
Yeah, I mean, maybe I'm going to get made redundant would be my conclusion.
Are they good?
I think some of the questions are really good. On. I mean, I'm not a fan of a closed question.
Yeah.
So one of the ones in impact and purpose it asked me was, am I living in alignment with my values through the work that I do?
Okay.
Now, that's a closed question.
Yeah.
However, the fact it got to values, I was like, well, actually, that's kind of a good starting point. What it's done is put in brackets a kind of different way of expressing the same thing. So then it says in brackets, does your role allow you to express what's important to you? So I actually thought the words in brackets were more sort of everyday.
Still closed.
It's still closed, but it's trying to help me understand. Values is not a super concrete concept for some people, especially if you've not done loads of work on it. And so I felt like it was kind of giving me a bit more of like, this is what you might think about, or this is kind of where to go with this. So I didn't like the fact they were closed, but I did like the fact it had gone to values. And not all of them were closed. So one of them was, what opportunities am I helping to create? Brackets, think about new possibilities and growth. Majority of the questions actually were open, and there were even some if I type questions. So if I could design my ideal innovation project, what would it be?
Nice.
That's quite an imagining one.
Yeah.
And then in brackets, dream big, which I was like, oh, a bit cheesy. But, we get where it's going. And so though I might rephrase some of the questions some of the time, a lot of them were really good. Growth and learning. What experiments or new approaches could I try in my work? Mm-hmm. Again, we would talk about, experiment, trying new things out. Think about novelty and learning. So I actually felt, even if I might not have written the questions in quite this way, I thought they were good quality questions. If I was giving them a quality score, I'm like a 7 to an 8.
And you probably could, in the prompt, say, ask, open questions. You probably could knock out some of those closed questions in by refining the prompt further.
Yeah. And then I actually asked it, which questions do you think I should ask first? And it was saying, actually start with purpose and impact, because it made the connection between if you understand your why, you'll then be more motivated by the work that you do.
I agree
and
with
like
that.
We're both going, yeah. That's probably not probably not a bad place to start. It's perhaps quite a zoomed out place to start. Someone's not said they're feeling really lost or they're really lacking meaning. I just said I was a bit bored, and I did say a bit as well. So they perhaps went very zoomed out. But I think what this gave me was just loads and loads of prompts. If you were doing something like, and I didn't ask it this, but you could have done, you could use each of these questions to do a 3-minute mind map. So if you were a bit bored, you could be like, right, I'll take each of these questions and do a 3-minute mind map on what positive changes have my initiatives brought to the company or our customers for 3 minutes. And after that 3 minutes, I think you would feel better, because you would remind yourself of the work you've done that you feel really proud of. You're probably feeling a bit less bored. You're like, oh, actually, I have done some good work. And it perhaps just gives you a bit of a spark of energy to sort of rediscover some of that. Because often boredom comes from a bit like, maybe I've been doing a lot of the same things. Maybe I've not had any new opportunities. But maybe it sort of reminds you to go and create some of those opportunities. Maybe you fall into the trap of like waiting a bit.
Quick question for you. If you were in that situation, board innovation manager, who wants to kind of, feel a bit better about your work, and you didn't have AI, what would you have done instead?
Well, I can tell you what I did if that's useful.
And what was better? I'm trying to work out, would that have helped you in a better way than what you did do instead?
Well, what I did do was much more left field and lateral in its approach. I think I did the imagining. So I decided of some brands that I wanted to go and work for in my head, like quite famous brands that hadn't got jobs. It wasn't like I'd seen jobs advertised. And I made up products and ideas that I thought they should do.
Was one of them a beauty brand?
Yeah.
I remember you doing it. Yeah, I remember you doing it.
And when I think back to it, I'm like, what was I thinking? But I was a bit bored. And then I just really, do you know what? Back to, I do really like branding and words and how things look. I thought they'd done a really good job of that. I really liked their tone. Shout out to Benefit in the good old 90s, or no, must have been after that. I don't know. I don't want to say 90s. Later than that. They were innovative. I liked the brand. I liked I liked the copy and all those things. And we'd both learned about those sorts of things back in our Boots days. And so I just started writing copy, creating.
I remember you did write copy.
I don't even think I ever sent it to them. I might have done, but I don't remember ever applying for a job there. But I think it gave me a creative outlet.
Yeah.
And so, people who are maybe proper creative. So, where other people might draw a picture. I'm like, well, I can't draw a picture. And well, I could have a go, but it was very good. I think it was my creative outlet.
But if you're bored and you work in innovation, you probably do need a creative
outlet.
outlet.
And I think I wanted to work in innovation in a slightly different way. So I think I did imagine.
So I think that is better than those questions. However, I think you're the sort of person who was naturally already asking yourself those questions. So perhaps for somebody, I don't
know though. I don't know if it was, because I think it was a form of escapism, but that didn't move me forward. Whereas I think some of these questions, that is the time actually where somebody introduced me to the idea of values. And so I think these questions would have practically helped to move me forward. I think creating fake products for benefit, which sounds so weird to say out loud. I'm actually embarrassed by this.
You still got it?
No, I really hope I haven't. Yeah, I don't even know where I put it, but I just really do remember doing it. I'm like, well, that was just, it was so disconnected. Rather than, like even having a conversation with my manager or trying to make my day job better, I think I felt a bit powerless maybe. But I think I did also fall into that waiting rather than creating. And these questions would have been like, well, okay, so your job might not be ideal right now, but what skills could you gain? Who else could you go and talk to? One of the questions here is like, who are the inspiring people or companies in the innovation space that I can learn from? Seek out external inspiration. So I was doing a bit of that, but I also wasn't thinking, well, what are the innovation communities or networks or anything like that? I think I was a bit solo and a bit isolated, and I don't think that was helping me much. Just sitting by myself.
Just a little flashback to little us. Little us are the things that we did. Oh dear. So last one, LinkedIn.
I gave you this one. I delegated this to you.
I liked it. I really enjoyed this one.
Because I had a go and I was like, this just doesn't work. And then I was like, maybe Helen can make it work.
Do it. Okay, so the prompt. And the personalisation. There's only a tiny bit of personalisation actually I needed to do with this, which was basically stick in the link. Can you review my LinkedIn profile? Stick in the link. That's the only bit that you need to personalise this one. And then the rest of the prompt is, and do 3 things. Summarise my profile, identify the personal strengths that stand out, and suggest opportunities to improve my profile. The first bit that came back, you get some photo. It depends what you shared on LinkedIn, really. Mine's quite I would say a rich profile, given that I post almost every day. It's got a rich profile to mine. So the first thing is you get a couple of pictures. I thought it was quite interesting.
Are they pictures that you want?
Yeah, they were like 4 images, most of it with you.
Aww.
Yeah. And then you get a little summary at the top. And I thought it was quite interesting to scan through the summary and see things that it said.
I don't make an appearance in your summary though. Because I can see it now that you
No. I mean, there's a lot of co-ness. It just doesn't say who the other half is. Like, she is the co-founder. She is the co-author. Well, I know I'd quite like to have a replaceable business partner. Just like a
with AI.
Any co.
Your co could be ChatGPT.
Maybe after this. So you get a little summary, and I think that's kind of like, when people say, gosh, people are saying this to us at the moment we need a bio for you.
Oh, yeah.
I kind of think, is that the bio that you want? It's not bad. It wasn't. I didn't look and it was bad, but it's quite interesting. It's sort of like a quick bio. And then the standout personal strengths, I didn't say how many to give me. It gave 5. So for mine, for example, it gave the statements and then a little bit of expansion on it. So thought leadership, Helen's role as an author and podcast host. It's got you out. It hasn't put co-host.
I'm gone now.
You're gone now. Positions her as a leading voice in redefining career development. Effective communication, innovative thinking, empathy, and relatability. Look at you, so mean. You're like, wouldn't have put that. You looked at me wouldn't have put that in the top skills.
I wouldn't put it as number 4.
Apparently her focus on personal stories and real life applications resonates with a diverse audience.
Oh, okay. Well, the second bit of that's true.
Okay, yeah, I think so. Okay, and then strategic vision.
Is there a link to Teen Vogue here?
I don't know why there's a link to Teen Vogue. I don't think I've ever
posted about something for Teen Vogue.
I'm not going to click on it now. I don't know where it's going to take me, but I don't know why it's going to Teen Vogue. But
giving advice, career advice from teenagers.
Could do. I think the useful thing there is for you to think about. We often talk about the difference between intent and impact. So intent being, what do I want to be known for, and then clearly this is the impact in terms of the strengths that are standing out for my profile. And I think it's useful for you to think, is that how you want to come across?
Mine was a disaster.
Really? What did you get?
Because I don't post all the time, which I don't think you have to do to be on LinkedIn, as we said at the start. That's never going to be me. I think it took a lot of the jobs that I've done before, and it really seemed to overstate those. So it read like I was some sort of marketing guru.
Oh, really?
So it was really like marketing. It was creative, which obviously is good for me, but it seemed to like that or be more interested in that than it did what I do at Amazing If. Even though, I mean, I've got a summary I've written, I've done the basics relatively well, but it did make me think quite a few of my recommendations are from people who are maybe still in that world. Has that affected the algorithm? And you also have to work out, I suppose, which bits you care about. So I'm like, well, I think the summary in particular, it made me look at that again and just think, like maybe are the keywords missing that I might want to put in? Have I literally said explicitly the words like career development or Squiggly Careers? Maybe I'd want to do some of that in a slightly different way. I don't think I've updated my summary for quite a long time, but I was like, it ignored my more recent experience and sort of overstated what I'd done before.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe the third part of this prompt might have helped you, which is what are your opportunities for profile enhancement? So again, it gave me 5. Optimize the about section, which I thought I haven't updated that for ages.
No, I haven't done that for ages.
It said specific achievements, metric, impact of your work, incorporate rich media, videos and interviews, links to the podcast episodes, highlight key skills, gather recommendations, your point in there that actually that's probably quite useful to reflect what you're doing right now, and then regular content sharing. I actually found some of that was a bit generic. It's like kind of like, that's like LinkedIn 101 rather than 101me. Like what's most useful for me?
Yeah, I wonder what would happen if you put in a prompt that maybe said, I don't want to post publicly on LinkedIn.
But I do want to be known for...
Yeah, but I do want to be known for thought leadership on career developments. That would be me. What would you recommend could be useful for me to do? So that might come up with more things like, okay, well, maybe you could write longer form articles that you could link to. So when we do like a HBR article, then I'm much happier to go, if anyone's interested in fast feedback, here's a HBR article. Maybe it's more about, I actually really like celebrating other people's successes. And I love it when people share Squiggly Career stories or the work that they're doing in their company on Squiggly Careers. And so I would never not want to be on LinkedIn because actually then if I wasn't, I wouldn't see those things.
Yeah.
And then I can actually respond and say, that's amazing. And I really thank you for sharing it. And probably particularly people's personal journeys, when they're like, well, I did do this, and then Squiggly Careers has sort of been part of my journey, and they're now doing something that they enjoy much more, and there's someone you've never met and you've never come across. I'm always like, that makes me feel like we've played a tiny, tiny role in someone's career.
My follow-up prompt for this one, which was actually quite helpful, was I want to be known for, insert the thing, so I put career development. Who should I follow for inspiration?
Did I come up?
No.
Oh.
I love that you would ask that question. Did I come up?
Well, I've not come up in any of the other things. I was like, maybe it was you were just waiting to say,
sorry.
But for inspiration. I mean, I can't believe how funny you find that. I'm not an inspiration.
No, you are my inspiration.
Okay, right.
But ChatGPT
suggested some
other people.
Okay.
And I did find that useful. Herminia Ibarra.
Okay, well, she's good to be fair. So, been on the podcast.
Adam Grant came up. So I did find it. I think it is. I think LinkedIn is a really important part of building your profile. Whilst I wouldn't use everything ChatGPT says to sort of change the way that I use LinkedIn or what it looks like, I do think it is a quick bit of input. Equally, I could ask you. I could say, could you do a 5-minute look through of my LinkedIn and let me know whether you think that reflects me at my best and things I want to be known for? And I think you could probably be more critical than it has been. So
I wonder, you can ask AI to play different roles. That's actually one of the other things that people said to me that AI does really well. You've just got to learn some of this, haven't you? You've got to remember to do it because you're just not used to it. You could then ask the ChatGPT to play the role of a critical friend.
Yeah.
What I think it had made me think, though, just going through the process for this podcast, is the more you practice prompts, the better you get at writing them.
That's true.
The follow-up prompts really help you. Ask the prompt to rewrite the prompt to make it better. And I think the more you practice using it for careers, for learning, for development, it will just become second nature. And I do think people are starting to see it in that way, but you still need to remember some of the builds. I wouldn't have thought to ask it to do me a checklist that was a PDF.
Yeah.
I forget it can do that.
Yeah.
I know that it can do roles, but I didn't, remember in that moment. So I think maybe even having, some time to do this together as a team, because I think we've got better here because we both did it actually separately. And then together you're like, I also tried this. And I was like, I did it that way. And so I think hearing other people talk about how they are using ChatGPT or whatever AI to make their role more efficient, but particularly around like career and learning, the more you sort of talk about it and share it, I think everyone goes, oh, that's a good idea.
It's like sharing prompts is just so useful, I think. So what we will do is we will put these 4 prompts in the pod sheet so that you have got them and you can cut and paste and just personalise them with what you're going through at the moment. And hopefully you'll find it as a sort of practical and funny source of career support too.
But that's everything for this week. Thank you so much for listening, and we're back with you again soon. Bye for now.